A stage for abolitionists to speak, an association that included a prominent member of Black society in its ranks. Mechanics Hall in Worcester is bringing a neglected piece of history to light through an art installation many years in the making. The Portraits Project will tell a more complete history of the role that African Americans had in 19th century Worcester and in this historic building. If the walls of Mechanics Hall could talk, they would tell the stories of prolific orators, countless concerts, and even roller derby crashes. This building in the heart of Worcester has innovated to keep its doors open and evolved to accurately represent and reflect its history in the community. In the mid-19th century, Worcester was in the midst of a rapid growth period, and the mechanics were at the heart of that economy. The Worcester County Mechanics Association was founded in 1842 as an educational and charitable organization to foster skills in the mechanical arts required for the new industrial age.
They were the foundation of a change of our economy from farming to industry. And the purpose of the hall and of the organization was to educate young men in the skills they needed in the new industries, but also a wider scope of education, cultural, political, social. Frederick Douglass, for instance, began to come to Worcester in the 1840s before Mechanics Hall was built. And then we love to know that he was one of the first people on our stage when we opened in 1857.
Since then, thousands of notable and historic figures have graced the Mechanics Hall stage. Literary giants like Emerson, Thoreau, Twain and Dickens, and modern-day politicians and musicians.
Isaac Stern and Yo-Yo Ma, Beverly Sills and Duke Ellington.
Yo-Yo Ma visits the hall for performance and recordings. Mechanics Hall is internationally renowned for its acoustics and is home to the oldest unaltered 4-keyboard pipe organ in the Western Hemisphere. As other venues opened in Worcester and as interests changed, so did Mechanics Hall.
The hall was starting to age and was not as popular a place for activity as it had been. And so we did interesting things like wrestling and boxing and roller skating.
As Executive Director Kathleen Gagne explains, the Mechanics Association's roots extend into the social justice movement.
The mechanics were pretty progressive thinkers. I mean, they were innovators. They wanted to create things that were new and lasting.
The mechanics were focused on 3 major social concerns: abolition, women's rights, and temperance. But it took some time for the walls of the Great Hall to reflect their values. Women were not added to the portrait gallery until 1999. The lack of diversity also didn't go unnoticed.
When I received an award for arts, I called attention to the fact on stage in my little speech, the fact that there were no folks of color that were on the wall.
Almost 20 years since that call out by local preservationist Gloria D. Hall, the portraits of Frederick Douglass, Sojourner Truth, and William and Martha Brown are being unveiled to the community. Carol Goldsberry Tucker is the great-great-granddaughter of Martha and William Brown.
A PhD student from Clark University had got in touch with my parents and said, "You have roots. We've traced back 7 generations of your family in Massachusetts, and we want to tell that story. The power in the history of a Black family being in Massachusetts for that many years. It's just really cool."
William Brown was an inventor holding several patents, an upholsterer, and a carpet maker. In 1867, he also became the first Black member of the Worcester County Mechanics Association. His wife, Martha Tulip Lewis Brown, worked alongside him, and later their son Charles joined the family business.
Growing up, my grandmother did talk about the fact that Frederick Douglass did visit that house a lot, and it was just kind of like a story. As we learned more, where they were able to look into information they had in the collection, we really were able to trace that back, that for sure, Frederick Douglass was friends with my great-great-grandparents.
The Brown's descendants, the Goldsberry family, donated a collection to the American Antiquarian Society of what is now known as one of the earliest and largest intact 19th century libraries owned by a Black family. Brooklyn-based artist Brenda Zalmani incorporated details from this collection into the portrait.
Books, the bookshelf, one of the important parts of my family, and in Palmer Ave was the piano. Learning about my great-great-grandfather's role in design, in furniture design, and in the curtain industry. So the patents that are in the portrait are really meaningful, and they're real.
She had to do an incredible amount of research because there was no picture photos of them together. There aren't that many photos of Black couples from that period of time. To create a portrait of that size, she had done a large portrait in the past. She has not done one that large. As a matter of fact, she said she'd never do it again.
The formidable portrait is 10.5 feet tall and 8 feet wide.
When the portrait was revealed to my family, we were just blown away at the beauty and the imagery, the symbolism, and in every single piece of that portrait has a strong meaning, I think, back to my family and to the Browns.
The Goldsberry family's connection to Mechanics Hall continues beyond the legacy of the Browns. Tucker noted that her wedding reception was held in Mechanics Hall. Her brother James currently serves on the Board of Trustees, as their parents, Doctors John Goldsberry and Dorista Goldsberry, did before him. The family, including Tucker's children, gathered for an early unveiling of the portraits.
You often see famous men or men, and they are not able to do what they do if it were not for their wives. I just thought it was important to kind of have that and to show that, Black life, Black love, Black family.
The new portraits stand out compared to the existing works, and that is by design.
I've been in the hall for many, many years, and I was one who said, well, they need to be done in the 19th century style. And I said it more than once, until finally Gloria said, stop saying that. Because we're not in the 19th century, we're in the 21st century. And so I stopped saying it, and look at the result. They're just magnificent.
Frederick Douglass' portrait is so powerful and beautiful. I'm so excited about it and really happy that Mechanics Hall was really willing to take that risk and that chance to do this kind of representation.
Visual artist Iman Nisei Ime's use of modern-day symbolism, such as the book in Douglas' hand, The Audacity of Hope by Barack Obama, speak to how Gagne would like Mechanics Hall to be viewed by the next generation.
But we do a lot of children's programs in the hall, and it's important that children see examples of excellence, and which is pretty much the heart and soul of this building. The point is to uplift, and I think that uplifting everyone in the community so that they can identify with dreamers and people who accomplish amazing things is very, very important.
And the Massachusetts roots of the Goldsberry family extend beyond Worcester. Margaret Tulip was the great-grandmother of Martha Brown. Now, she was enslaved as a child in Lexington, was emancipated, and then unjustly enslaved again. So she sued and won her freedom back in court in 1770. Tulip is honored along with 19 other notable women in Lexington history in the Something is Being Done monument, which was unveiled this spring by Lex See Her, an organization dedicated to increasing the visibility of the contributions of women to society. And we'd also like to note the recent passing of Dr. John Goldsberry at the age of 94. His stewardship of Mechanics Hall is among his numerous contributions to the city of Worcester.